So yesterday I was on X and I was trying to come up with something to talk about, content. And I was scrolling through and I saw this post about a guy who had said he was done trying to be an entrepreneur and it was just too hard and you couldn't do it. And he tried three different times and couldn't get anybody to sign up and onto his SaaS product or whatever. And so I wrote a little post out and I said, I started my first company from a Quonset hut in Afghanistan using a 15-inch laptop and a dial up connection. You have no excuses, right? And the purpose of that was just to remind people that everybody starts somewhere, right? And everybody's got it hard. And that there are people, wherever you're starting out at, there are people who came before you who had less resources, fewer technological advances, less time than you do. And it was meant to kind of be a kick in the pants and an inspirational post about what's possible. And what happened was nobody believed me. They thought I was lying. I even had one woman tell me that I had to be lying because they didn't have internet in Afghanistan in 2008. And I, that's okay. Like people say all kinds of crazy stuff on the internet that isn't true. So the fact that they didn't believe me didn't bother me that much. What bothered me was that it's a really good story. And I wanted the chance to tell it. And so I thought I'd just push play on the camera here and tell you the story. And in the hopes that maybe, hey, you realize, hey, maybe I should take my shot. Maybe it is possible because there are folks that really did have it much harder and had fewer opportunities to, get their message out. And um, so I was in the military for several years, and I was in a special operations unit. It's called Force Reconnaissance, and we did a lot of high speed, low drag stuff. And when I got out of the military, I wasn't really trained to do anything. I was qualified for nothing really, other than blowing stuff up. And when the wars kicked off in 2000, and when the wars kicked off, they started hiring guys like me for Iraq and Afghanistan to go and provide security to everything from security at buildings to security at camps, all the way to high threat security for diplomats. And that was what I did. I did high threat security for a company that worked for the State Department, and I protected diplomats and VIPs who would come into places like Iraq and Afghanistan. And during the time I launched my first company, I was living in Afghanistan, and I was part of the high threat protection detail for the U.S. ambassador there. And we lived in this little camp, kind of in the middle of town. And there was this big Quonset hut, and the Quonset hut, they come in all shapes and sizes. I tried to find a picture of the one that we lived in, but I couldn't find one. And it looks like a big aircraft hangar. The one that we lived in, it was a big aircraft hangar, but just had doors instead of a big rolling cage for a plane. And then inside, they had put out a bunch of rooms. They'd be basically 8 by 8 windowless rooms. And everyone who lived at the camp and who worked on that contract stayed in that big Quonset hut. And we needed internet to operate, obviously, but you couldn't pipe it in. They didn't have it like they have it here in America. You had to get it by satellite. And you can imagine 200 guys all in one spot all at night using the internet. It cut that internet speed down to where page load times were, I think, 20 or 30 seconds to load a page on the internet. In contrast, today it takes about 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds or so. And so I had been trading currencies for a number of years. I've been working as a contractor for several years before I started my company. And I had gotten to be pretty good at it. And I had considered starting a fund, some sort of fund, and to get me out, because I didn't want to do contracting forever. It's a good way to never see your family or to die early. And so I'd been working on this, and I had a friend of mine who taught trading for futures trading. I did currency trading. And he said, yeah, you need to kind of learn, you need to take this course, buy this course from this guy, and he'll show you how to build a website and how to start generating a following. And I thought he was crazy. Like, I thought that was the stupidest thing. I'm like, what? I'm going to buy some course from some dude online and he's going to teach me how to make $1 million online. But he was a good friend. I trusted him. So I forked over the $1,000 or whatever it was to buy the course. It was a course by Ryan Dice. It was one of the first courses he ever put out. It was like the $1 Million Napkin or something. And I would sit in there and watch the little videos that he had, and he was showing you how you put together a website and go to get WordPress, and you get your WordPress site. But back then it wasn't WordPress like it is today. They don't have drag and drop editors. There was none of that technology. Like, they gave you the framework of what a WordPress, of the bones of a site, and then they had 2 or 3 different variations that you could choose from, different design types. And after that, you had to code it yourself. And so I would sit at night after I got done with work in my little 8x8 cell, windowless office on my little desk and my laptop, and I would have 2 windows open. I would have one window that had the copy. No, it was 3. I had 3 windows open. So I had one window that explained how to write the HTML code to modify the site. And so I would look up what that was. And then I would go to the next page, and the next page had all the HTML code for my site. And I would make the little adjustment that I thought would change the background color of the website. And then I had another window open that was the actual website, and I would hit refresh. And then 20 seconds would go by, and it would reload the page. And if I was lucky, it did what I wanted it to do. And if not, my site would be a complete mess because I just screwed up the code. So then I would have to go back to the HTML code page, make the adjustments, hit refresh, wait another 20 seconds, then go back to the main page, hit refresh, see if I went back to normal. Okay, so now we're back to 0. Then I got to go back, try the code again, hit refresh, let the site reload, go back to the web page, hit refresh, wait 20 seconds. It was hours and hours and hours of sitting at this desk, just hunched over like this, typing it out, trying to build this site. And I finally got it to a point after a couple of months where it looked great. One of the hardest things I had to do on the site was figure out how to enter an email address, right? Because now you just drag the thing over and they've got gravity forms and stuff you just put on your page. Back then, you had to code it all. So I had to go and read about how to code it and then go do it. I mean, still easy. Honestly, still easier than trying to do it before the resources were online, but much, much more difficult than it was today. And what made it even worse really was the fact that we had essentially a dial-up satellite internet connection was all we had available. So eventually I got the site to the point where it was functional and it could take an email address, and I put some videos on there showing people kind of what I did and how I traded, and then I realized, well, nobody's just going to find this site on their own. Like, nobody's just going to show up on my website. I got to figure out some way to get them there. And again, no social media back then. Not like it is today. You had what were called chat forums, and some of you guys are old enough to remember the old chat forums, but it was basically just a place you could go where people would have subjects that they wanted to talk about, and then there'd be back and forth discussion on there. And there was one called Forex Factory that I think is still around, but it was the biggest Forex kind of chat forum that was there. And so I would spend all of my time trading and in the chat forums, like talking with people about what I was doing and sharing my ideas. And I ended up creating a video every week that talked about what I thought was going to happen the next week in the currency markets. So here's where I think all the currencies are today, and here's where I think they're going to be next week. Here's where I think where the big moves are. And I convinced the guys at Forex Factory to let me post that out to the forum, and so that everybody could see it. I don't know why they allowed me to do this, because it was kind of like a shameless self-promotion. But the content was so good, I think they thought, this will be really valuable. People will want to see this. And so at the end of every one of those videos, I'd kind of be like, so that's what I think is going to happen. And hey, appreciate you guys watching. And by the way, if you would just prefer me to email you this video every week, like I'm happy to do that. Just go sign up on this form right here, and I'll just send it to you. That way you don't have to go hunt for it. And it was nothing fancy. Like, now they've got all kinds of like hooks and ethical bribes and lead magnets that they put together and funnels. We didn't have any of that. I didn't have any of that. I was just like, hey, I got this. If you want this thing I just gave you for free that you can find right here every week, I will also email that to you if you want. And And people started signing up. It took 4 or 5 months of me doing that, and I had like 100 people on my email list. And so for those of you guys, so keep in mind from the start to that point where I had that 100 people on my email list was like 2 years, right? So if you're sitting around and it's been 3 months and you don't have any traction and nobody's following you and you've been posting every day and you don't have anybody on your email list yet, it's because it's difficult. I had some advantages, so there weren't a lot of people doing what I was doing back then. If I was going to jump in today, it'd be so much easier to start promoting myself and to build the website and to have the lead magnets and all of that stuff. But the number of people doing it has increased by 1,000x, right? So there are new struggles today that I didn't have, and there are things that are easy for you that were struggles for me. And so at this point, we're 2 years in, I got 100 people on my list, and I'm starting to get people asking me questions. And again, I didn't know what I was going to do with this. I just knew that it would be helpful if I had some people that I maybe would be able to market to later. And they kept asking me about some of the trades that I was thinking about taking. So things like where are you going to get in? Like where's your targets at? Where are you going to stop's going to go? Like common questions that you get if you're in the trading or investing space. And I thought, well, there's something here. I said, I can't give personalized, tailored trading advice to people because that's against the law. You can't, if you have to be licensed to do that. But I can tell people what I'm going to do or what I just did, and that's completely legal. And so I sent an email to my 100 people on my list, and I said, hey, I've had a lot of questions about this, so here's what I'm willing to do. If you want me to, I will send you every single trade that I take the second that I take it. And I was trading a long enough time frame that the people would have time to take advantage, even if they didn't get it instantaneously, right? And I got 10 people to sign up, 10 people of the 100. Now that I didn't realize it at the time, but that was an absurdly high conversion rate. If you get 1% these days, it feels pretty good. 10% was gnarly, and it was $250 a month. And I was like, wow, with one email, I've got now $30,000 a year business. And I thought, that's bonkers. It really works. I asked people for money on the internet and somebody gave it to me. 10 people did. This is crazy. And I think that was the moment that it really switched on for me that hey, this is a real thing. People talk about it all the time and you hear about it, but until you actually experience it, and somebody says, yeah, dude, I like what you do enough that I want to give you money to know more, is a life-changing experience. It's a life-changing feeling. And it let me know that, hey, if I play my cards right, if I do good by people, that I won't, that I'll be able to take care of myself, and I won't have to rely on a job, and I can do the things that I love, and I won't have anybody who can stand in my way. And it was at that point that I said, I'm going to pour myself all into this. I'm just going to get every spare. I was already spending almost all of my free time, but that's when I saw the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm like, I can get out of here. I can leave Afghanistan and I can go home. And I had a new baby at home, and I was tired of watching her grow up on the internet. And so I poured myself into it, and I made some connections. And one day I got lucky. And this is the thing about luck. See, I think that luck happens to all of us, but I think that some of us are prepared for it and others of us aren't. And I think people who consistently get lucky are the people who are consistently prepared for luck and opportunity when it arrives. And so I had all the infrastructure laid out. 2.5 years I've been working on this thing. I have lists. I have product, this thing I'm doing. And then a friend of mine called me up and he said, I made a connection. I was at an event and I made a connection with the guys, and they have a list of 20,000 Forex traders. And he said, they need a product. So they're marketing guys. They know how to build lists, but they need a product to sell. And again, remember back then it wasn't like there were 10,000 products to choose from. There weren't that many reputable people doing it. And he said, if I turn you over to those guys, will you split the money with me on a sale of a product, on a program or a course? And I said, yeah, why not? Yeah. And I was coming off of contract, so I had to sign up for, when you work in the security business, you are typically on a year to 18-month contracts. And my contract was coming to an end. And so I took a chance and I went off contract and I went home and I put together this thing and we emailed people and we said, hey, come to this free 2-week long training where I'm going to teach you how I trade currencies. And we got about 2,000 people of the 20,000 to sign up for that event. And to make the long story short, as I went through the whole process of training them, and I didn't really know whether, I'm like, we'll see. Like in my mind, the idea that we were going to make tens of thousands of dollars off of this 2-week event that I was putting on was really beyond my capacity. And it's funny because when you start making $1,000 consistently, making $10,000 consistently sounds crazy. But then once you start making 10,000, you're like, it's not that big a deal. But 100,000, that seems wild. And then once you have your first $100,000 month, you're like, wow, I wonder if I could do that again. And then eventually you're doing 100,000 a month, and then that doesn't seem that big a deal. So when I first started out, the idea that this one campaign, this one little thing was going to net me tens of thousands of dollars was crazy. And so I'm supposed to sell this course at the end, and I hadn't really started it yet. I hadn't really even put it together because I didn't know if anybody was going to buy it. And it came time to give them the pitch and be like, here's the program. And it was a 90-day coaching program where I would trade with people every day. And then I would teach them the strategies and help walk them through the psychology and the important stuff. Just to, what I thought was going to be a really helpful course for people. And all I had was the outline. And we gave them the opportunity to buy, and we sold $270,000, I think, worth of forex coaching program that day, and I couldn't believe it. I was so excited, and I was terrified because I'm like, I don't have a course. I just sold something I don't have. And so now I'm back to now I'm working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so what I told everybody was, okay, we're not going to start the program for a week, to give everybody a rest because we've been doing this for 2 weeks. So take a week rest and we'll come back and then we'll kick the course off a week later. And I spent that first week building out the first week of content for the course. And then I would give that to everybody. And then while they're working on that week stuff, I was building out the second week. And I did that for the entire 90 days. I would just build out the course a week in advance and turn it over to them as we went along. And out of that $270,000, after I paid off the guys who had owned the list because they get a piece of it, and I split it with the guy who had introduced me, I ended up with about $60,000. Which is about what I would make in 3 or 4 months working overseas. And so I thought, all right, not bad. Like I got a 3-month window now. So now I got to figure out in the next 3 months how I'm going to do this again. And that's what launched the company. And for a long time, and for the first several years that I was home, it was the Wild West. I would come up with an idea on a Monday, and on a Friday we were making an offer. We would go long stretches of time where we didn't make any money. So I would go easily 3 months without making any money. And so every single campaign that we had was do or die. And this went on for years until finally we built up enough momentum and we had enough people and we had enough product line that we were making consistent money and it was predictable. And that's a really long, so that's the story. That's how I started my first company. It ended up being a multi-million-dollar company. We served more than 10,000 traders in 110 countries. It was, I'm very proud of what we built and what I was able to do from a very meager beginning and no real budget. And so I would just encourage you, if you're in a place right now where you're finding it really difficult and you just feel like, man, the walls are stacked up against you and the whole world is conspiring against you to see that you fail, that just remember, like, almost everybody has it this way. I'm not going to say everybody has it hard. Some people, maybe they just have it easy. But most of us, to get where we are today, we worked real hard, and it wasn't a guarantee. And none of us thought that a lot of us didn't think it was going to work in the beginning, but we just kept at it. And you lose sleep, and sometimes you cry, and you sit in a corner, and you don't know what to do. And when those times come, the right answer is something to take some kind of action. And I was lucky enough that it paid off. And I hope that this inspires you and gives you a little bit of confidence to maybe do what other people won't, and to take some risks in your life. I can't imagine where my life would be right now if I hadn't taken that risk. And if I hadn't had a long enough time horizon to just say, hey, I don't need this to work in 3 months. I'm just going to do this and see how it goes. And then if that goes well, I'll do more of that. And then over the course of time, nothing becomes something. So anyway, go out there and get it. Talk to you guys later.